Yeah, what up guys? Nico here with a new build video, and this is my Arc life stacking assassin. We're taking advantage of Bifurcate. We're life stacking to sacrifice, basically make all our damage chaos. We'll just go ahead and start with Uber Boss real quick, and then I'll show you some mapping that I've been doing. Okay, so he's dead. You'll notice we got pretty unlucky there once he was low life. That's just how the Bifurcate can be and stuff. We'll talk about that later. I'll go ahead and jump into a map so you can see the real shining of Arc, which is one of my favorite skills right next to Exsanguinate. So just doing some juiced Abyss here. 100% more life, rare monster, extra modifier. So we have Nemesis, Tradition, Adversaries, Wisps. Basically just currency hunting. So we have 94% more currency, 8-mon map here. So regular Arc, we have 21 chains with Pact of Baydat. And then with Vaal Arc, we have 27 chains. So this is an insanely satisfying character to map with. We're also chaos damage, so we can ignore actually like a lot of map mods, but like life is extra, doesn't matter to us. There are 2 mods that will brick this build. That is, you don't want to take the recovery because it'll go over 100%, and that actually bricks the recharge that we have, and that's how we sustain. And the other mod is on altars, where taking chaos damage per second, you will eventually just drain your whole life pool because we use Dissolution of the Flesh, which we have to take no damage for 2 seconds. That bricks it. Those are the only 2 you have to look out for. I still remove annoying mods like, block, max res, but like you can run all of those, no problem. No regen, all that kind of stuff. So again with this, unfortunately Frostblink and Wintry Blast is buggy once you have so much cast speed, just sometimes bounce around, but it is what it is. Like that. Obviously don't take, like res ones that's gonna like break your builds. That's just silly. But like you'll see right here, like if I Vaal Arc this, all these monsters, it's so satisfying. Because like I said, we have 27 on Vaal Arc, 21 on our normal Arc. So like that mod right there at the top, do not take that. You will just eventually drain your whole life pool and not good things. Burning Ground doesn't affect us because Pantheon upgrade. So that is not a concern. So again, use the Vaal Arc whenever you want. Has really good chaining range. And it's up often, basically coming right back up after you cast your next one once it's off low gain recovery. Cast Wither when you need, like this Soul Eater guy, kill him. Because that way we're actually stacking Wither from our Despair, yeah. So yeah, as you can see with the Vaal Arc and the Arc's chaining, very fast clearing, very good single target. Do this last pit. That's it. Oh, there's one more. So yeah, that's the map. I'll come back and loot that stuff. Talk about the build. Like I said, I tried a bunch of different skills. Like Overloaded Intensity obviously is insanely strong or bifurcate, because we're kind of crutching knife in the back to give us a lot more crit chance until they're low life. But we remedy that because we have Coiling Strike. So that takes that disparity of like 20%, where it's like, yeah, you can low roll some damage and like maybe you don't crit, maybe you don't high roll and bifurcate and stuff, but it's not a big deal. You're still going to kill him regardless. And so like overload and intensity help with that. I tested a lot of skills, some better, some worse. But there was always like a drawback to the skills, whether it was better single target, then it just had worse clear. It was like good clear, but worse single target. But I just always kept coming back to Arc because it just great single target and amazing clear. Like the chains in Arc are so satisfying. And like I said, especially because we have Pact of Baydat, which adds the chains, and you can increase this further if you empower instead of enhance. But I chose enhance to get 10 casts instead of the normal 8. So you can get more damage. It obviously boosts up the damage that you get from this, and it gives an extra chain. But personally, didn't feel like I needed extra damage. So I went with enhance to get more casts, just to have more uptime on the Pact. And yeah, so for the defenses of the build, and we'll talk about the life stacking with the Dissolution of the Flesh. Obviously this jewel, you know, not everybody's favorite thing, but when you solve the issues of degens and stuff, it's actually very comfortable to use. And it's really cheap for that reason, that a lot of people just think it's like terrible to map with or play with. Not the case when you actually solve your defenses and ailment immunities and stuff. So basically think of this as like your resource now. And then once you start to reserve your life, that like looks like how my mana bar looks like this, that's when you'll actually be taking damage. All this is just like your resource. This doesn't matter. So you see nothing goes off. And because we're always low life, we're obviously taking advantage of Pain Attunement. Just more damage. So how do we make this work well? Well, we take Eternal Youth. We take Blood Magic. These are boosting our life. And this makes it so that Energy Shield Recharge applies to life. This is massive. As you see, my recharge is about 11,000. And that's why you want to get recharge rate wherever you can on gear. So like we have it at Eldritch Implicit, Suffix here, Craft here, basically anywhere you can get it and stuff. This is very strong. So that's one. And obviously as you boost more life, and you know, ES turns into life because of Apostate. So that's why we have Energy Shield items. So basically all that Energy Shield turns into life. And that is why we have so much life and why we're using ES spaces. So they synergize with each other. Now, outside of that, we are 78% block for attack and spell. We cast a spell, which is always up, 78, 78. Obviously all res cap, chaos res capped, all that stuff. But we are ailment immune because Storm Shroud and Avoid Shock on a flask. Before Mage Blood, obviously you would be using, you know, like a Stygian Vice, and you would have a Jewel that would combo with 60% and 40% from a Jewel, or you have like the boots and stuff too, any combo of that. Make yourself immune there. We cannot be poisoned because of Essence of Delirium on our boots. This is obviously very massive. And then our Pantheon, unaffected by Burning Ground. This is another one, especially because I run red altars. You don't want red or Burning Ground because that can be annoying. Sun immune, just for Brine King, so it saves you a flash suffix. This last one is a flex. You can use whatever you want here. You can use an armor flask for higher EHP, some Fizz mitigation. And that's the same with the Storm Shroud. So, because we use Void Manipulation, this build is all chaos damage. Because Nameless Bloodline, which is converting the 25% basically to chaos. And then Sacrifice Support, which is basically 56% to chaos. And then Rune Graft of the Witchmark, which is another 2% to chaos. So essentially, if we take out Void Manipulation, the lightning is pretty low. That's why Void Manipulation is socket in. But what you can do for a lot more EHP is instead of Storm Shroud, use Progenesis. You can keep the setup like this if you want, but you could put something in here like Enhance, and this would still give you the benefit of shocks. Probably not too much, like maybe 15, 20% shock. Realistically, you're probably still doing more damage with Void Manipulation. But for damage, that's why we're using Storm Shroud, because this gets us 50% shocks, because basically our chaos damage and critting is then shocking, since we're always critting. And that's just an option if you want to swap that. Also, as far as us applying Wither, please don't use spell totems. Characters using Wither spell totems that aren't occultists are just trolling. You're lucky to get, you're realistically never getting the double digits Wither stacks. Balance of Terror is beautiful on this, especially because we have so much cast speed. Unfortunately, you can't use this in the trigger setup. You have to self-cast this to actually get the benefit of that, which isn't really a big deal, but just worth mentioning because you see I have a trigger craft here. And that gets our Wither maxed out, no problems. Yeah, this build is actually really strong and my favorite of the league so far. And especially like before you start min-maxing the build like I have, or you get into experimented bases like your Simplex, your Helical, and like Mageblood. Before that stuff, this build is really cheap to get going. Like, the Forbidden Flame and Flesh Jewels, you would just want to buy whatever combo of the two is cheaper between Mystical Infusion and Opportunistic. Pathing to Opportunistic yourself is a bit stronger because you get 10 crit multi instead of 10% spell damage. But it's so marginal, just whichever's cheaper is, what you would take. The jewels are essentially just for block, spell block. Watcher's Eye, the most important here is the cast speed and the increased life recovery vitality. So this is a question I got a lot too because we have Eternal Blessing for a Zealotry. So what this does is you see your non-blessing skills which reserve mana are disabled. So with Blood Magic, we can bypass this and have a high level precision for crit and just a level 1 vitality for the Watcher's Eye mod, essentially. Because this gives us passive life regen to help synergize with that recharge at the same time. So it's just more regen so we can cast more, make sure our trigger's crafting. As you can see as I'm casting, once they come off cooldown, they'll just cast again. So there's, no downtime with that. And obviously still keeps us on low life. Outside of that, it's just crit multi-jewels. Your Lethal Pride, you're looking for max life, double damage. Those are the only ones that matter. And yeah, regular Storm Shroud. Like I said, for the damaging elements, make sure you cannot be poisoned. For up to blood immunity, we have the Burning Ground immunity. And the build feels amazing to play. Clear is amazing. Single target is a solid, AA+. No problems with any content in the game. I can hop over to the PoB. We can look at the damage. Like I said, this, I don't know how it calculates the pact, but like if you want to see why your pact's up, like this is the damage while you're actually hitting with the pact up. But I just have everything on like average. Obviously we got power charges. Consecrated Ground, 1-1, this is set up for single target. Wither stacks, the chains are max because again, single target. This is set up in mine with Storm Shroud. So we have max shock, unnerve, consecrated ground, zealotry. Do be mindful, like I said, when the enemy is low life, our damage will drop a lot, and our crit, especially with our bifurcate, you can get sort of unlucky. But like I said, that is remedied also because we have Culling Strike from Knife in the Back. So that was also where I was talking like overloaded intensity was really nice, but Arc overall is just. It just has the whole package, honestly, compared to all the other skills. So, with that, the most important stuff, I'll just go through the gear real quick. Gem levels don't really matter too much. Actually, like hardly, I can show you. Like if I level this up, you see like going really high. Doesn't really matter. That's why I just have a 2020 Vaal Arc for the benefit of Vaal Arc, obviously. One thing before I wanted to say, so like I said, you can put in Progenesis. It's going to boost your Fizz max it a lot. But again, depending on if you use Enhance or whatever, the shocks are not going to be there. So if you would use like Enhance, like your shock may be like 20 or something, so it's going to drop a lot. Obviously, the damage is going to go down too because you have Enhance over Void Manipulation. But just something to consider. So that is why we're using Stormblood to get those big shocks and more damage. Another thing you can do, like I said, is use a Sulfur Flask. And that's what I had on. And this also helps remedy once they are low life because I put crit on it. So it'd help a little bit of that disparity, get that Culling Strike faster, kill the boss faster. Other than that, this stuff is all just on like average wither stacks. So as far as the wand, you're looking for as high as possible spell damage, cast speed, crit multi, trigger, of course, for the quality of life of triggering your pact of bait at, ice golem for some extra crit, and those are enhanced. Wrath Pith, this can obviously be min-maxed further. A 4% spell damage Wrath Pith would be an insane damage boost. Obviously, that gets rid of the chance to block. But just to show, if I come in here and do 4% on just the spell damage, you can see that is a nearly 16% damage increase. Now, obviously, we would have to solve block with that. Attack block, whether that be with more attack block tattoos, but realistically, we would probably have to remove a mod, a crit multi mod, off of these jewels and chance to block while wielding a shield. And then we just have a Lich Circlet, high as much ES as possible. You would obviously buy fractured percent ES or life with this, and then you're using max ES essences, and then you're finishing the suffixes with Eldritch currencies. Apostate, corrupted this myself. I hit +1. Cool. Awesome. Great. That just increases the skill of the supports, really. Obviously, as you scale these further, it is extra damage. So that's good in that regard. Warlock Gloves, same idea. You're either buying increased percent ES or fractured max life. And then you're using max ES essences. And then you're finishing the suffixes with Eldritch currency. Obviously, these could be better. The ES recharge rate, I could recraft them in that. A lot of my stuff you'll see isn't really min-maxed as far as gear concerned. Like the Helical and Simplex are really strong, but like the gear and stuff, these can be a lot better, a lot higher ES. And that in turn turns into life, which in turn turns into crit chance and spell damage, and obviously like EHP, so those are all making you stronger. Chaos damage leeches life because we are chaos damage. Unnerve, more damage. Warlock Boots, you want to fracture an Abyss socket. And then from there, you're using Essences of Delirium. And as you can see, since I have Chaos Res here, and this is also depending on your gear and stuff too, but if you got something like a Tier 2 Chaos Res or any Res, you can obviously swap these two around, well, these three around. All these resist through the items. So you're basically just looking for something that fits that suffix. And then you're finishing the prefixes with Eldritch Currency, Veiled Exalted Orb. Done with that. Corrupted Blood Immunity. Obviously, we need this. We want to be immune to all damaging ailments. And so we're just looking for as much life as possible. Crit multi here. That kind of stuff. Amulet, you're looking for as much cast speed, crit multi, and life as possible. Those are your main scalers, obviously. Doesn't have to be a Simplex Amulet. Obviously, this is like Giga Min-Max. Anoint Force of Darkness. This is Chaos Ben. This is a rare commodity. A lot of damage. Helical Ring. Again, same story here. You're looking for high life, cast speed, crit multi. We're also using this to solve reses. So we have like a tier 2 all res and a crafted Cold and Chaos. And obviously all this stuff can be stronger later. If you really want to Giga Min-Max, you can start reflecting these items and get ridiculous numbers. Another thing with the Apostate that you can get real crazy with is if you get an Apostate on a Stasis Prison, because that basically gives you the mod, the same mod, because the Vestigial mod is 50%, but when it's on a Stasis Prison, it gets boosted back above that. And in turn, you gain a really good item that also has like 300 or 400 base CS, which is a lot of life. So that is a very Giga Min-Max thing. Obviously, I assume it would be really expensive, unless you just like get lucky and get one yourself. Last, pretty explanatory. You guys can see them. Block Jewels, Crit Multi-Jewels, Lethal Pride. Important mods here are just double damage for increased max life. Cast Speed, Life Recovery, Vitality. That's what's important here. Dissolution of Flesh. You want to get as high as more max life as possible. I think a 30% is only like 4 Divines or something. 6 Divines. Past that, Forbidden Flame. You know, same thing I said. Whichever one's cheaper between the two. Not much of a big difference. It's either 10% spell damage or 10% crit multi. Not the end of the world. Just a regular Storm Shroud to get us ailment immune. Balance of Terror, that's for a Wither. And then just another Block Jewel. Yeah, this has been my favorite build of the league by far. Obviously, we also have Mortal Call, but I have this disabled. And like I said, you can make this build really tanky. Like, it's obviously it's a huge life pool, but usually people think Dissolution of Flesh, like you start getting hit and you just fall over. But because we have so many layers and we're immune to damaging ailments, immune to regular ailments, so we're not like taking extra damage and all that, you know, shit. We're also 78% block, which helps a lot. But if you look like, if you go full defense on the build, get the Granite Flask in and everything, and then like, because it's level 1, so anytime you actually do get hit through blocking that, you would trigger this. It's relatively tanky. And I felt like this was overkill, and that's, I mean, either way you can argue it if you want more defenses, more damage, but since I was having no issues anyway, I went into just some more damage and the big shocks with Stormblood. That way I can just clear stuff faster, because I was doing, what is it, the Giga Abyss strat, which was annoying because I'd have to like slot in Frostbomb. The one that like spreads the mods. I can't remember the name of the All Flame. Where is it? This one. Propagation. I think it's more like a Headhunter strat. I didn't really like it too much. I went to a currency strat. But I'd have to like socket in Frostbomb, because they'd get like ridiculous mods, like 50 plus mods or something. And luckily they can't leech from us because of this, but they would regen so much in that it was just an annoying strat. I didn't think it was worth it. It's probably a really fun mod strat if you're using Headhunter, because they get a ridiculous amount of modifiers that you're stealing. And same thing like using Charlatan, so you'd have like all the shrines up in that, but that's a tangent. So yeah, I would say that this build, I honestly might league start it. Like if life stacking stuff stays as cheap as it was this league when I made this character, like literally all my money is in the Helical Ring, the Simplex, and Mageblood. But like before that, this build is so cheap to just start. Like you don't care about gem levels and that, so you're basically just like as much spell damage and life, you're stacking that everywhere. That's your bread and butter. That scales you with Wrathpith. And Wrathpith was also nerfed, so like I had never played this before, and yeah, I'm surprised how strong it is. But yeah, if you guys want like a more rundown of the crafting process and that, like I can probably update the notes of all this stuff to how to craft all these items and that. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. Till then, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care, guys. Later.